But today I'm so happy to have Gaby Guzman with me. And she's a powerhouse. We have so much in common, and I can't wait to talk about, a lot of those things that we do have in common, like spirituality, like business, like,
Feng shui.
yeah, feng shui, absolutely, and so many other things. But Gaby, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself because I know that you, like me, we go through these periods where it's like, okay, I'm working on this one core thing right now, and this is how I want to introduce myself. So tell us a little bit more about you and what you're up to right now in life.
Absolutely, absolutely. So my the best way to describe my work these days is I help empower women to strengthen their spirit so they can embrace their purpose. And this is after many years as a business coach. And I've always been an intuitive business coach, even before I recognized that I needed to call myself that.
Right.
Realizing that there was stuff going on back here,
Okay.
right? All the stuff that goes on back here, like the limiting beliefs. And also like over here is like your future self, like calling you into greatness. And then it's like all of these things that are kind of behind the scenes that for many of us are unexplored, and they're actually running the show. And
Yes.
so what happens when we like invite them into the light? What
Yeah.
happens when we bring our wholeness into the picture and embrace all of who we are and learn to live with and have a different relationship with our fears, learn to embrace our vision and what excites us? What can we create from that standpoint? And so these days, I'm still very excited to work with women entrepreneurs because I feel like it's such a beautiful way to birth your purpose through
Yes.
a business or through a project and organization. But at the same time, like I have women coming to me to work through healing the death of a loved one
Mm.
or to just bring more joy and pleasure into their lives. And so really it becomes a way to just learn to strengthen your spirit and become more authentically who you are from a deeply spiritual place.
Mm. I love it. And I love what you started with, which is these little voices.
Mm-hmm.
Back here, there's this whole world back here, right?
There's a whole
And
world.
I think that's one of the reasons why so many of us have begun to embrace things like I'm a spiritual coach, I'm an
Yeah.
intuitive coach, because we can't quiet that world. It is a part of our wholeness. And when we try to separate it to just keep moving forward, get
Yeah.
things done, get from point A to point B, because we're so afraid that if we stop along the way to just listen, to that inner voice, that wise voice that we all have, that we're going to get sidetracked.
Yeah.
And yet, that's the beauty of these journeys that we have, right? It's about allowing ourselves to get sidetracked so that we can really be able to understand our purpose. That strength that we all can cultivate if we, really look at ourselves in the mirror and
Absolutely.
find that direction. So I'd love to know more. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between being an intuitive business coach and taking someone through that process versus this new process. How does it differ, and how is it kind of the same still?
Well, I feel like one of the things that would come up in the past is that I would be having, and it's so beautiful for me because like this process has been completely organic. It has been my own evolution and then the energy that I embody when I'm in with my clients and then the questions that they suddenly start asking. So to give you a very concrete example, 5 years ago, I would sit in front of a mastermind leading it, and there would be questions about sales funnels and about marketing. And slowly they became questions about like, how do I move through this fear? I feel stuck over here. I don't have clarity here. I am afraid that I will always be X. I have this deep calling to do Y, but it terrifies me. Right. And so, like, literally, it was almost like my embodiment shifted
Mm,
the experiences that I started hosting. And
yeah.
so, whereas in the first example, I would still very much like answer the question about creating your sales pipeline from the perspective of like feel into who you want to attract and like what is the energy that you're embodying, to a place where these are all the conversations that we're having, right? Like, what energy are you embodying? What are you moving through? Where do you feel stuck? Where is your growth edge? Where do you get to ask for support? How are you cultivating trust in your life? Like, it really is about a measure of success that is beyond what we normally see in the world, right? Like, it's not like, this is the number in my bank account, these are my number of clients. There are many people in the world who have presumably impressive numbers there and are miserable.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so I'm interested in the kind of success that has you sleeping well at night,
Right.
has you waking up juicy and energized to do what you do and feeling fulfilled and feeling abundant.
Yeah.
And having you embody that energy and just live it in your day-to-day and enjoying the juiciness along the way. Like,
Yeah.
that's the success I'm interested in. And does it come with lots of money? Hell yes.
Yes.
But I want it in a way that is fulfilling and authentic to you.
Yeah. You know, it's so interesting because I still think today, I work with a lot of, you know, corporations and executive women like you do. And I think we can probably both say we were that woman at one point too, where, you know, you're waking up and you're going to work and you're like, you're not able to engage in the way that you would want to, which is wake up with all of that energy. And what am I going to put out into the world today? And receiving it back from the world as well. And today, the numbers are still dreary. The engagement numbers, it's about 70% of people are still disengaged from what they're doing, right? And so people wonder why we keep having this conversation about purpose, why we keep having this conversation about feeling good about who you are, you know, and starting from that point, not the black and white, right? And so there's still so much work to be done. There's still so many individuals who haven't been able to find that voice inside of them, that inner light that allows them to just be themselves, right? In other words, no matter what it is that you're doing, you know, today I'm having this conversation with you. Tomorrow I could be, you know, doing something completely different. And yet, how can I still show up as myself and give the best of who I am? And when we're connected to that energy and that purpose, it doesn't matter what we're doing. Right. And so for many years, the conversation was, okay, if you're not happy, you got to leave your job, do something else, but not necessarily. Right. How do I find joy in what I'm doing today? And if I recognize that, okay, this job, this role is not the best for me, that's okay. How can I still, you know, bring the best of myself forward while I'm working on that plan of how I want to show up, you know, a few months from now. And love what you said. You know, it almost sounds like, Gaby, that once we decide how we want to show up, the conversations change, the people that show up change, right? So yeah, maybe at the beginning it was very business focused because that's how you showed up, right? It's like, yeah, I can build your funnel.
And that's what I had learned, right? Like that's what I had, and that's also what I had learned that people needed from me.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like you're really just, you've been, intuitive is the right word. You're so connected with who you are. And so you are mirroring what the evolution of these individuals who are showing up for you.
Yes.
Right. And becoming who they need you to be. And in that sense, you're also evolving, you know, yourself, which is awesome. So let me now introduce the big question that I always ask in these conversations, which is, and I know we all have many, many fierce moments. And for me, how I define fierce again is those pivotal shifts in our life where we're like, you know what? I'm going to show up for myself. And that means that I'm going to make this decision. That means that I'm going to change the way I've been doing X, Y, and Z. So what is a recent fierce moment in your life that you're really proud of that you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, I mean, God, a huge moment that happened to me last year was when I decided to leave my role as CEO of the business I founded. And some people here might be familiar with it. It's a membership community for women entrepreneurs called Las Comadres. I launched it in the fall of 2018. I ran it for almost 3 years, most of that time alongside my co-founder, Jamie Nolan, and ran it from a purely like heart-focused, juicy, like excited place until like it started feeling like off for me to have that role.
Mm.
And for me to be involved in that way. And that was the beginning of recognizing like, this is a transition. And like, I gave birth to this baby, but I don't have to raise it for the rest of my life.
Right.
And so being able to step away from that role, to leave my co-founder as CEO and like be okay with that was a huge internal thing for me, because I thought I was going to be running it until I was 90 years old.
Right.
And I can't even tell you how many interviews I did where I said that. Right. But that recognition that life changes, priorities change. At the time I was moving in with my partner, he has 3 boys. With my son, like so much of my life was shifting, and the priorities of my full life were shifting. And I was not going to be in a position where I had the energy and the time and the space to dedicate to the new priorities of my life if I kept that role in that particular business. And so making a big decision and recognizing that that's what needed to happen was huge. And I had like 1,000 ego deaths before that decision was able to like fully come through. And it did. It's what needed to happen. And I also feel like there's something really beautiful when you've created something with integrity and with deep connection and trust. The ease of that transition is something that I'll be talking about for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Wow.
Because I've had business partnerships not end well.
Sure.
And to the way that Jamie like was able to step up, the way that the two of us were able to manage that was so beautiful and so trusting and so heart opening, and so open, that I'm just super proud of that.
Wow. So I'd like to dive into that a little bit, because I think so many of us, whether it's a partnership or a personal relationship, that's probably one of the biggest stressors that people have is relationships, right? And how do I share what I want to convey? How do I honor my truth and what I'm feeling? And with the fear that this person may not want to ever talk to me again, you know, it could sever a relationship. And I think you and I both know, I mean, I know many people
who've been through that.
We've been through that, where those relationships just are never what they used to be.
Absolutely.
And so I want to let's talk about leadership for a minute, you know, because what I'm hearing from you is a lot of really important like leadership qualities and characteristics, you know, that you kind of leaned into. You know, to be a leader, we can't keep doing what we've been doing, right? It's a ladder that we have to walk up. You left your role, you know, and a lot of people are very fearful, you know, so talking about the ego death in leadership, we have to help raise other people up. Absolutely. Right? So how beautiful that you were able to do that. Also, a big part of leadership is having the difficult conversations, having a fierce conversation with someone. So what made it so open? What made it a beautiful process instead of what it could have been, right?
I think that at the end and at the core of it all is the relationship that Jamie and I have always cultivated with each other. And even like, to give you a sense of like how we moved through things, like there's just always been this very raw honesty between us. And there was always this understanding that our friendship would never be on the line because of this business. Right. That the relationship that we had was important enough to both of us. And that is what we preserved first. Like, I sent this woman an email. She was not expecting this news. Okay. And I went to New Orleans, which is like my magic place. And I like had the download on the plane. And the next day I wrote her a super long email because I felt like, I was like, I want you to read it, process it, and then we can talk.
Yes.
And the first words out of this woman's mouth were, "This must be the bravest thing you've ever done." Oh. That just tells you like the human that I'm talking about, right? I just grabbed this immense weight of responsibility, placed it square on her shoulders, and that is what she said to me, right? Mm-hmm. So that like tells you everything. It's like the way that we communicated about work, the way that we moved through it, like like, damn, I'm afraid of this. And what are you afraid of? And what are we creating? And wasn't this magical? There was just this like raw openness and honesty and a preserving of the friendship. And we also knew,
Yeah.
like, running a community for women entrepreneurs, that we were constantly modeling and embodying what we wanted to be the intention for everyone.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like that kept us like
So amazing.
coming back to integrity time and time and time again, which is what made a process like this, which normally can unfortunately be quite traumatic and hostile, be actually like really smooth, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, what comes to mind for me is like, you know, wouldn't it be wonderful if we created these sacred contracts with, you know, all of these important people in our life, right? We're always running at the speed of light. But to be able to sit down and say, you know, what are the values that we share together? You know, what are the values that are going to guide our friendship? And hello, Ellie Manso Kane. Thanks for joining us. Happy to see you here. And because that's going to be different with everybody, right? I have my values, you have your values. And part of lifting each other up is recognizing, where are we the same? Where are we different? And how can we help each other lift each other up through this process, whatever that process is, if it's a marriage, if it's a friendship, if it's a business partnership. And I think that we need more of that. You know, we need more of those honest conversations where, to your point earlier, we're showing up whole as a whole person. I'm going to show you my ugly side and my really scary side, so that you know when you can help me, right? When you know that I'm going through an ego death, you know, and I need a little bit of support. And conversely, when we're outgrowing each other and I just need to move on, or you need to move on, and can we still love each other and have a relationship built in love and not, you know, and not in fear. So how lucky are you guys to have each other? That's a beautiful relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Gaby, I have to ask, because now knowing a little bit about this fierce moment, so what sign are you?
Libra.
You're a Libra, so relationships are so important.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And finding the balance, right? Of making sure that I can see how that decision weighed on you, you know, as a Libra. It's like, I don't want to hurt her, and I don't want to do something that's going to damage this this relationship. So wow, beautiful to know that. Hi Neha, hello. We got some fabulous viewers here. Okay, wait, I think I have 2 more comments. No, okay. All right, so keeping an eye on this. Okay, so we talked a little bit about leadership, and this is really important in this group, because we're all leaders, right? It doesn't matter what title we have. It doesn't matter what business we're in. Leadership is how we show up every single day, and how we show up for ourselves, how we show up for others, and understanding that helps us to make those fierce, you know, decisions and have fierce conversations with others, right? Because if we're not willing to be the leaders of our own lives, how are we going to raise up other leaders, right? Around us, in our businesses, in our homes. And so leadership is, you know, I'm hearing that a lot today. I want to go back to intuition, because that's something that comes up quite a bit in this group. I think almost everyone who joins Essentially Woo wants to be the kind of woman that makes decisions from a place where she feels it in her heart. She feels it in her soul. She feels it in her body. And she doesn't necessarily have to pick up the phone and call 10 of her friends for advice before she just says, no, like, I got this. This is the decision I know I need to make. So with this fierce decision that you made, Gaby, you said it felt off. So what did you feel? Like, what started to shift for you? Did you feel it in your body? Was it a thought that showed up for you? How does intuition show up for you? I guess is
I mean, for me, intuition is very much unknowing.
Okay.
And you know how some people are like, they see, some people hear, some people, right? For me, it's like, whew, it like lands as a deep knowing, and there's no shaking it. I have learned here's what I have learned to do. I've learned to
Okay.
not question it,
Okay.
but I do ask the universe to give me a couple days to settle it. Just give me a couple days. I got you, but I need 48 hours to sit with this massive transformation of my life.
Right. And maybe you're like me, okay? Because now we're getting really woo-woo and everybody knows
Yeah.
in this group.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I expect 3 signs, universe. So I am not going to move forward. I know what I need to do, but I
Yeah.
need you to prove to me I need signs. I need you to confirm for me that I am making the right decision. And I'll give you a fun example, and I think everybody
Yeah.
will love this. So what was I doing? Okay, well, I think I was going through my priestess program. So for those of you who don't know, I went through a priestess program and then a high priestess program. So yes, you can call me a high priestess. It's a lot of fun having that title. And we had to come up with a symbol for one of our, for one of our special rituals.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure what that sign was. And it was super important to me to have the right sign. And so the first thing I did was I get a lot of downloads, my downloads, which for me, it's knowing as well, right? Intuition for me is just, I know it. The words just show up in my head. And so I was going for a walk and I said, okay, guides, universe, I want you to show me my symbol. And I literally took not even 10 steps and looked down and saw this beautiful feather. Okay. And birds are major messengers for me. So I pay attention when I see feathers. And so this beautiful feather showed up. I didn't pick it up or anything. I just acknowledged it. And I said, and I felt it in my body. I just, I'm like, okay, I think that's my symbol. And so I just kept walking and I said, okay, thank you so much. I need more. I need another confirmation, at least one more confirmation, please. And so later, I think maybe the next day, went to one of my fellow priestesses' homes for I think it was full moon ritual. And she opens a circle with a beautiful poem that we had used in one of our previous rituals. And again, it was the coolest thing. So as she was reading it, I felt this knowing. And in my head, I got a vision of the cover of a book. And I said, I really, really feel, and I don't know why, I feel like what you're reading comes from a book that the cover of a book has a feather on it. And so, not kidding. So in that moment, I literally stopped. I said, listen, we have to stop. I Googled it. And she told me the name of the book, and I pulled up the image of the book, and kid you not, a feather on the cover of the book. And I'm like, okay, so that's it. So I felt what I knew I knew, had it confirmed twice. And that's how I have fun with, with my intuition as well. And just asking the universe for signs and confirmations. And, I firmly believe that we are not alone physically, but we're certainly not alone spiritually. And we've got all of these beautiful energies that are listening to us, want to support us, want to have fun with us in ways like that. And it's just another layer of working with your intuition and bringing some joy and fun into the process of making fierce decisions, because sometimes making those fierce decisions, is really heavy, and being able to lighten it a little bit through spirituality, I think is kind of fun too.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. Oof,
yeah.
I love that. I love that example. And that's that knowing. I mean, I don't ask for signs, but that knowing is like undeniable for me. And so it's interesting.
So you asked the universe for a few days.
I asked the universe for a few days, and then instead of calling my friends for advice or feedback, I call them for accountability. So I call the people, and every time, and I was like, I'm saying this out loud to you, because every time I say it out loud, I strengthen it as what is. And so now all of my brujas are on notice of what I'm up to and are going to hold me to it.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about that is when you're surrounded with the right people, they're not going to try to convince you otherwise. They may give you feedback. right? They're going to be like, hey, have you thought about this? I really feel like you should do this instead. But when you come back to those individuals in your life and say, I've made up my mind.
Yeah.
Whether it's right or wrong, this is what I'm doing. I need your support and I need you to back me up. They're going to be like, no problem.
Yes.
No problem.
100%.
Right.
100%.
And then if it's one of those decisions, unfortunately, where maybe we were wrong, they're going to be like, it's okay. Let's talk about what we learned.
Absolutely. And it was something that I needed to experience to move on. The thing that I feel like is one of the most powerful things that you cultivate as a human being when you commit to this life of intuitive living and when you commit to strengthening your spirit is that there is a foundation of trust and I'm going to be okay through all of it.
All of it.
Through all of it. Through the things that don't work out and the things that succeed enormously, right? Through whatever might happen, there is this like baseline of I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. I am supported divinely. I am supported here on this earth. Like I can walk through the earth. I can mess up 12,000 times.
Yeah.
I'm good.
I'm good. And I think that that's one of the hardest skills that I've seen others have difficulty with for whatever reason. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but by no means. Part of it may be because I'm a Pisces and I do go with the flow and I don't want to experience pain or suffering if I don't have to. So for me, it's easier to shift and say, I'm just going to be okay because I want to feel okay no matter what. Even though I'm not in a state of joy or bliss in this moment, I'm just going to accept what's happening because accepting what's happening feels so much better than fighting.
Absolutely.
Fighting, what doesn't feel right. But I've noticed that that's one of the bigger skills that a lot of these fierce women in our lives have trouble, getting to. Like, I just can't feel okay unless X, Y, and Z is happening. In your experience, working with women to strengthen their spirit, what are some of the tips or techniques or that you find really helps them to get to a place where it's a little bit easier to be okay with no matter what's happening?
Absolutely. So I would say that like hands down, the thing that I always insist on with all my clients, whether it's a group program or one-on-one, is to come up with a daily ritual. And to me, it is like a moment of your day that you are setting aside for your divinity.
Yeah.
And to like strengthen that part of you that knows, strengthen the voice of your intuition, and strengthen your ability to remember your truth, which is that you are supported and that you're good and that it's going to be okay. And so having like, I feel like I'm constantly talking about the sort of compounded effect of being able to have that discipline and that commitment day after day. I don't do it every single day. I do it most days.
Yeah.
And after a while, the really beautiful thing that happens that I loved because I saw it happen within myself and I've seen it happen a million times is that I used to live in a place where I was always freaking out. And I might have like one confident day when like some great thing happened. And then I'd come back to my usual like low level anxiety, freaking out, existent default, right? And to be in a state, and how did that surface? I was always worrying about money. I wasn't sleeping well. I would like think about all the ways that the thing that I was doing was going to be sabotaged. I would self-sabotage, right? Like that's the way that would play out. After a certain amount of time surrounded by the right people with the right structure and committing to a daily ritual, it flipped. It flipped to the place where the trust and that I'm good became my new default. And I might have a day where I dip. I was like, oh my God, that was a hard day. And I'm like crying on the floor and I'm like, why, universe, why? Right. And then like, but then I just come back to my like, but it's going to be okay. I trust. Like it never falls so low that I feel like I can't get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. A new normal, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's a new normal. Like the baseline, my spiritual baseline shifted into trust. Yes. And it's still something that I spent the first like 30 something years of my life in the other one. So it's still something that I have to actively cultivate and come back to, but it is because I've certainly been through difficult times in this new baseline and it feels totally different.
It feels so different. And when you go back to that old place oh boy, do you feel it? You know,
Yeah.
once you get to that new normal and you go back to an old pattern,
Mhm.
it's just not the same, you know.
Yeah,
You just feel horrible, you want to run away from it. And I love that low level anxiety. And the reality is so many people live there, they just don't know it because they're not willing to accept that that's where they are, right? And so
absolutely.
the beginning of transformation, I know you would agree, is just the awareness
Absolutely.
of this is my default. I don't like it. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
good. And because of this default that I have, I'm stressed out. I'm over, these are the majority of the words that everybody uses: stressed out, overwhelmed, sick, tired, not making enough money, you know, not happy. And so, okay, it's okay. Let's just accept that that's the
Yeah.
default. And now we have to shift it, right?
And I
And
feel like one really helpful thing for people who are feeling resistant to going all the way there is
yeah,
like, what if we just agree that something has to change?
yeah, yes.
Period. For today, that's all you have to do.
And that's a fierce decision right there.
That's enough. You don't have to know what it is. You don't have to know
Right,
how deep in the water you're going to go. You just need to know that something needs to change. And by
right,
like baby stepping it in that way, it makes it possible to start opening up. I mean, like, what if as an experiment we explore A? All
right.
right, let me sit with A and see how it feels. I
Yeah,
can pop back out anytime I want, but let
yeah,
me like give myself the opportunity to explore something different in my life and to explore
absolutely.
that maybe there are some stories and some attachments that I have that don't define me and aren't serving me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like this concept of playing the game of life, because life is
Yeah.
kind of a game, right? But
Yeah.
if we approach the game of life from an unconscious place where we're not really paying attention to our default tendencies, the choices that we're making, and we're just running through the script like we
Yeah.
do every day, it's impossible, you know, to shift out of it. But once you make the decision that I'm going to be aware of the game that I play, and I can play it from a place of consciousness where in every
Mhm.
moment I'm pausing and deciding what's going to feel good right now,
Yeah.
it just changes the way you play the game of life, you know, and it just changes
Absolutely.
things a little bit. Um, so I'd love to know, Gaby, and I know you mentioned that it changes. Mine changes too. I think what hasn't changed about my morning routine is
Yeah.
that the first 2 hours of every morning are mine. And
Oh,
then I
right.
decide what I want to do with it,
Yes,
right?
you fill it up however you like.
I fill it up usually. I'm pretty consistent. I tend to fill it up with um, meditation first, walking my dog, then coming back and doing like yoga or Tai Chi or something like that, and then journaling or whatever. Um, but sometimes it's different.
Yeah.
So let's not talk about the consistency of ritual, but what are those aspects of your ritual that have really supported you along this way, you know, along your journey that you've been on?
Yes. Yes. I mean, for me, I'm a big person. I process a lot when I write.
Mm-hmm.
So journaling is huge for me. And so journaling is a big part of it. And for a while, I did The Artist's Way and I did morning pages, which for those of you who might not be familiar, it's basically you fill up 3 pages every day. It doesn't matter if it's like gibberish, right? Like your point is to just like write and let it all out. So journaling is huge for me. Now, one thing that hasn't come as natural for me, but it's my growth edge, is the movement.
Yeah.
And so I will like take a long walk, like
Yeah.
and like literally before I start walking, I'm like, I'm taking this walk with the intention of X,
Yes.
right? Like if there's something like weighing on me, I'm taking
Mm,
this walk. By the end of this walk, I will have this lifted and I will have clarity around X. And sometimes it's just the movement for the sake of movement, and that's beautiful, and that like shakes up energy and does what it needs to do. But for me, like the act of physical movement is like the shaking up of energy so that I see clearly so that things get unstuck, you know, like I do that with intention. And also meditating and altars. Like you and I are both feng shui people. We're both physical spaces people. Like I'm constantly, like if I'm feeling stuck, the first thing I do is declutter, move things around, light a little sage, start setting things up differently. And then all of a sudden, like the things in my house are talking to me. It's like this plant wants to be moved over there and this wants to go here.
27 things, girl. Move the 27 things.
100%. Like it's one of my favorite tools because like also as a Libra, I'm like a big lover of beauty. And so it just like very much plays to my natural tendencies to shift my the energy in my physical space to shift the energy within.
Yes, it's unbelievable. So let's talk a little feng shui. So ladies,
yes,
Gaby and I are both certified feng shui professionals. And, you know, I share with everybody that the proof is in the pudding. Like, I don't have to prove anything. In fact, both Ellie and Neha have done feng shui with me and are believers in, you know, in that really you're shifting energy, pure and simple. You're clearing energy, you're raising the vibration of energy. And through feng shui, what I love most about it is that it's, for me, one of the best tools for living intentionally through mind, through body, through spirit, through space. And so I'm going to share just a couple examples, but for me, the biggest thing is when other people come into my space, that's when I know that I've done a good job, that it works. Because, you know, back in 2019, we had a home and we sold it. And boy, did I do so much feng shui on that home. And I do it daily. You know, I practice like you, daily feng shui. It's like, what doesn't feel good? And I'll never forget that my realtor walked in and he's like, gosh, it just feels good in here. And his comment during the open house was that this was the first time that he's ever heard multiple people say, God, the energy in here feels really good. And I'm like, okay.
Nicely done.
Yeah. And we sold our house in one day, you know? So it was like, oh, okay, beautiful. And even today I have a much smaller space. I'm just in an apartment, but I love it when people come over and say, I just love spending time here. You know, can we spend time in your place? And I'm like, absolutely. You know, so you can feel the love when you pour it into, you know, a space. And so, decluttering is one of the things that I try to do daily, because a lot of people get overwhelmed with the concept of feng shui. Like, you don't have to do it all at once. In fact, I think it's so much more powerful when you look at an area of your life. Let's just talk wealth and abundance, because so many people want more money,
on that one,
more, you know, and say, okay, well, let me figure out where are those wealth corners, areas, quadrants in my home. And let me just look with an open eye, you know, like, does the area look good? Does it feel good? What's represented there? You know, and if there's
is there clutter here?
Is there dust and spiders in the, you know, in the corner? What colors are represented there? Because, you know, colors is one of the best ways to shift energy. So how are you using feng shui today? Like in your business? Obviously you use it personally and are benefiting from it. Is it also something that you bring into your business with your clients?
Yes. So one of the areas that I love to activate is the fame and reputation area.
Yes.
And it's really fascinating because, like, I feel like the name doesn't do it justice. Like, this area really is reflective of, in so many ways, like how you feel about yourself and how you present yourself, even though the name is sort of more externally focused. But I like have been in this moment of my life and career where I feel like I'm like moving to a different space that is like even more public and even more visible, and writing a book. And so like I have like these things going on that I know are just naturally positioning me in a different space. And so activating that part of my office has been really fun and intentional, because I know that so much of it is like me seeing myself in a new light, like like my word for the summer is claim. And so like me claiming my power, claiming the impact that I get to make, at a deeper, more profound, more powerful level, so that I can show up for those things that I want more fully and more whole. And so yeah, there's some red, there's some fire,
Yes.
there's some height.
Triangles.
There's some
Yeah.
triangles and there's some height.
I love to put cactuses. Red cactuses with there's so many great ways to activate all of these different areas. But that is a really important one for women, women entrepreneurs, women leaders.
Totally.
So much of what you're speaking to today, which I really appreciate, because one of the ways that I work with corporations is leadership. I'm a leadership trainer, and so much of what you're saying, without using the word leadership, is leadership, right? And it's like, who are we, and how do I want to embrace the vision of my life that I desire, and how do I step into it and claim it for myself, right? And so these are small ways that we really are activating our leadership as women in the world.
Absolutely.
And not just business women, but mothers and friends and daughters and et cetera, et cetera. So awesome. I love that we have that in common, because I love speaking the language of feng shui without sounding like a crazy person,
It's so fun. It's like, to me, it's play.
It is play.
Like, it's like a new way to play with my magic. And like, what's not fun about that? Like,
right. And it's kind of fun, really, to, after you make a shift over the next few days, to ask yourself what changed in the 3D world, because a lot of times something will change in the 3D world. I remember recently I activated, one of my quadrants, and recognized that the very next day something showed up. And I was like, it's so important to make the energetic connection.
Absolutely.
That the universe is recognizing that we are intentionally bringing something forward or requesting something. And guess what? They're matching it. The universe is matching it, but sometimes we're not aware of it. And so it's nice to, to make that connection. All right. So we've got just a couple minutes left. You mentioned a book. I'd love to give you the space to maybe just say a couple words about it. What is this book about?
Yeah. So the book is about sisterhood.
Oh.
The book is about sisterhood and making friends as a grown-up.
Oh, I gotta buy it, girl.
Totally. I feel like, I've had so many different chapters of my life, but like, good girlfriends have been the backbone of my life. And also, like, having been called to work with women as a coach, and then having been called to create a membership community for women, and holding that very active, intentional space for 3 years, I learned so much about how much we need each other, and how we can create deeper, more honest, more authentic relationships where there is grace, where there is care, where there is deep honesty and truth, where there is courage. And so it's just sharing my experience with that. And the book is really going to be like a sharing of my experience, and also like an active guide for you to, have like ideas for things that you can try, journaling prompts to explore within yourself, like just like an active experience of how you can start embodying and calling this in your life.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. You are a creator, and so I love what you're creating. And I also saw, just by checking you out over the last year, that you've got a really cool tool, though. Are you still selling it for women who want to, your business planning?
Yes.
So talk to us about that, because I thought that was so neat and so creative, and just a beautiful way to intentionally create your business for those of you who want to be an entrepreneur, if you're not already.
Absolutely. So this really was born out of a process that I came up with for myself. And started, like, I realized that as I was like in a moment of reinvention for my business, I asked myself a series of questions, and I took like one index card for each question. And it was not only kind of the standard business questions, but I wanted to create a business that was rooted in intuition and rooted in my truest, most authentic spiritual self. And so I came up with these 10 questions, and they each became like 10 different exercises and work and like that you would work through, right? And then have them up somewhere visible, whether you kept them in your like daily planner or whether you kept them up on the wall. They're designed really beautifully to stay present to them, because oftentimes what happens when you're doing business planning is you have like a remarkable day and then you shut that notebook out or you leave it in the Google Docs and you never see it again. Right? Like
Yes.
these cards are meant to be magic. Like these cards are meant to be almost like a vision board where you're actively like pouring your energy into them every day. And the energy of that creation is coming back to you every day. And so these cards will, and this plan will walk you through everything from like how to show up on social, how you want to show up on social media, to like, what are your daily rituals? And like, how much money are you going to make and how are you going to plan your days? So like the really core essentials of planning an intuitive business are in the intuitive business plan.
I love it. And so it sounds like it's a really powerful tool for those of you who are more tactile, who are more creative, who are not going to put together a 25-page business plan. Like I would never do that as a creative person.
Yes. It's designed for creatives. Absolutely.
Right. And then from a feng shui perspective, my gosh, to be able to activate that, like actually put it on your wall and activate it energetically and look at it visually.
Yes.
Oh, so powerful. So I love that. When I saw that, I was like, oh, that's such a cool tool. So, all right, Gaby. So this has been awesome. Loved having this conversation. Thank you for being so open and sharing like your soul with us today.
My pleasure.
How can, if somebody wants to get in touch with you or just connect with you, if they're not already connected with you on social, like what's the best way for these beautiful ladies in our group to stay connected with you?
The best way is definitely Instagram. So at the Gaby Guzman, GabyGuzman.
Okay, awesome. So
DM me there and we'll hang. To let me know that you found me here. I would love to know.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. So great.
Thank you, Monique. This is a dream.
All right, honey. Take care. Love and light.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye, everybody.